it's not my thing. It's not a Fina thing. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. I'm Fina, and today I'm going to be doing the anti-TBR tag. So this tag was originally created by Nicole in her books, and I will be linking her original video and her channel in the description box down below, so if you want to go check those out, please go right ahead and do that. So the idea of this tag is basically to discuss books that you have no interest in reading and kind of why you have no interest in reading them, specifically popular books. And I think that it's a really great idea. I know that I have seen a lot of books around that are being hyped up all over the book side of the internet that just don't appeal to me, and it's really great to have an excuse to discuss those books and why I don't intend to read them. So without further ado, let's just get into the questions. So question number one is a popular book that everyone else seems to love, but that you have no interest in reading. And for this, I went with the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin. Now, I know not everyone loves this series, but it is really, really popular, probably one of the most popular adult fantasy series out there, but I just have no interest in reading it at all. And there are a few reasons for this. Firstly, grimdark as a genre does not really appeal to me. I don't like the idea of like this hopeless scenario, this hopeless world where it's just dark and grim and there's really no light at the end of the tunnel. That's not something that appeals to me. I really need to have hope in the books that I read, and the whole idea of grimdark is that there's not a lot of hope. So, I don't know. There probably is some really great grimdark out there, but it's just not a genre that just really appeals to me, and definitely that's the case with A Song of Ice and Fire. Another thing that I've heard about A Song of Ice and Fire is that it is very graphic, and I don't know that I would be able to handle that. I don't want to read something that's going to make me uncomfortable. Like, even some of the stuff that I've heard about this series makes me uncomfortable, and so I don't think that I would ever want to put myself through that. Personally, I'm perfectly okay with people loving these books. They're just not ones that look like they would be my cup of tea, and so I'm just going to avoid them. There are so many other books out there that I know I'm going to enjoy more, that I don't want to read a book that I know I'm probably going to dislike a lot. So question number two is a classic book or author that you have no interest in reading, and I have a couple answers for this. The first one that comes to mind immediately is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I genuinely don't want to read this book. I've tried to read it twice, DNF'd it both times, and I have no intention of picking it up and trying to read it for the third time. I know a lot of what happens later on, and honestly, the more I learn about the book, the less I want to read it. And I know a lot of people love this book, and obviously it's a classic for a reason. I'm not saying that it's a bad book. I'm just saying that it's not something that appeals to me personally, and I really don't think that I am ever going to get around to picking this up again. I know all of the major stuff that happens, and it doesn't appeal to me. The romance is a little weird. A lot weird, and there are just other things that I know I'll enjoy more, and there are other classic books that I personally know I will enjoy more, and so I just don't feel the need to try this book again. I've tried twice, I've given it a fair shot, and I think I can safely say this book is not for me. Another book that I can think of right away is Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, and I honestly don't really have any specific reason why I don't want to read this book. It just looks boring to me, and again, there are a lot of other books that I think would be more appealing to me, other classics that I think would be more interesting to read, and I can't see myself ever getting around to reading it. I read to enjoy books, and just being bored the whole time really doesn't appeal to me. And that's kind of the vibe that this book gives me, is that it's just going to be really boring, and I don't want to read a super long, dry book for no reason, you know? Like, if I'm not going to enjoy it, like, why bother? I mean, unless I was reading it for school or something, but I can't see myself picking this up on my own at all. Question number 3 is an author whose books you have no interest in reading, and for this I'm going to go with Sarah J. Maas's books. I did actually start Throne of Glass, but I only read 30 pages before I realized that it was not for me at all, and I honestly have no interest in trying to pick it up again or in reading any of Sarah J. Maas's other series. I've heard that the Throne of Glass series gets better, like you have to get past like book 4 and then it gets good, but honestly, why would I want to read 4 600-page books to maybe get to something good? There are series where it starts good in book 1 and it's good all the way through, and those are the series that I want to read. I don't want to slog through 4 books that I'm going to dislike to maybe get to something good. And so I don't think I'm ever going to try to read Throne of Glass again. I had a bunch of problems with it. Obviously, since I DNF'd it at 30 pages, and I do not normally DNF that early. But yeah, that was an interesting experience. And her other series, just I'm not interested. The Court of Thorns and Roses series, I know everyone like raves about that. No interest at all. Crescent City, the cover's nice, but that's pretty much all it's going for it in my opinion. And again, I'm not huge on romance-centric novels, and that's kind of what these books are. I've also heard that a lot of Sarah J. Maas's romances are kind of problematic and toxic, and I really don't like that. There are so many YA books out there that just have these really toxic, abusive relationships that are romanticized in the narrative, and I just don't like reading about that. And I mean, I don't know if that's what these books are like, because again, I haven't read them, but from what I've heard, that's the impression that they give me, and I really don't want to put myself through that. So definitely, I can never see myself picking up one of Sarah J. Maas's books, like, ever again. Question 3.2 is a problematic author whose books you have no interest in reading. And for this question, I'm going to go with Cassandra Clare. If you don't know why Cassandra Clare is problematic, I would suggest Googling it. I'm not getting into it here, but there are some things that I've heard about Cassandra Clare that just, I don't want to support that kind of thing. I really have no interest in her books anyway. Like, even if she wasn't problematic, I still wouldn't want to read her books. I just don't find the premises interesting, and also her romances, I've heard some things, and especially the first series, The Mortal Instruments, the romance just sounds really sketchy, and I don't like that. I watched the movie and it made me super uncomfortable, and I never want to put myself through that again. And I've heard that it's the same in the books, and maybe even worse. Like, I don't know, I haven't read them, and I never intend to, because oh my gosh, like, not okay. I have heard that her other series are better. Like, I've heard The Infernal Devices is a lot better, and the idea of a Victorian paranormal book does appeal to me. It is interesting, but I just am not interested in that specific series. Again, there are some like romance tropes that I don't think are cool, like love triangles again. I've heard that like all of her love interests, like all of her male love interests are like bad boys, and I don't like that trope either. And so I really don't want to read any of her books anyway. Like, even if the author wasn't problematic, I wouldn't want to, because they just don't appeal to me. Like, the books just don't look interesting to me. And I know a lot of people do love these books, but I can never see myself reading them, and I don't think I will ever change my opinion on this. Question number 4 is an author that you've tried a couple books from and have decided they're just not for you. Now, this one was a really hard question to come up with an answer for, but I ended up going with S.K. Ali. And I've only actually read one of her books. I DNF'd her other book, but I just don't feel like I will ever be reading another one of her books now. I read Saints and Misfits, and I didn't like it. There were a lot of things that I had issues with, and I DNF'd Love from A to Z at around 30%. I actually ended up picking up Saints and Misfits because I felt so bad about DNFing Love from A to Z, and I honestly, I wish I hadn't, because I ended up really disliking Saints and Misfits. I just had an issue with the writing style. I didn't really connect with the writing. I didn't like the writing, and the dialogue was really stiff, and there was just a lot of telling and info dumping, and I didn't like that either. Some of her characters were okay, I guess. The characters in Love from A to Z were interesting, but not interesting enough for me to push through and finish the book. And the characters in Saints and Misfits, honestly, I didn't care. And that makes me feel bad. But I didn't, and I'm going to be honest about it. Like, I just didn't care about the characters. And just overall, I've just had issues with both of S.K. Ali's books now, and some of the same issues with both of her books. And so I really don't think I will ever pick up another book by her. And that does make me feel bad, because I did really want to love one of her books, but I couldn't, and I really don't want to pick up another book by her going into it knowing that I'm probably going to dislike it, because I don't want to read books that I'm probably going to dislike. I don't want to rate books low on Goodreads. I just don't. Like, I want to go into every single book that I read expecting it to be good. And I don't think that'll be the case with any of S.K. Ali's future books anymore for me. And so I just think that her writing just isn't for me, and so I will probably not be reading any more of her books, unfortunately. Question number 5 is a genre that you're not interested in, or a genre that you tried to get into and couldn't. For this, I'm going to go with 2 genres. The first one is romance. There's not much to say here. I just don't like a lot of romance tropes, and I don't really like how a lot of romances are written. I do like some romance side plots, and I do like some romance-centric books, like Letters to the Lost. Actually, all of Bridget Kemmer's romance books, I love them. But for the most part, I just don't like the idea of the genre, and I really don't like a lot of the tropes that the genre uses, and so I really don't think that romance is a genre for me. The other genre that I can think of right off the top of my head is westerns, and I honestly have never even tried to get into westerns, and honestly, I have no motivation to. It's a genre that doesn't appeal to me at all, and I can't even really name a reason why, but it's not my thing. It's not a Fina thing, and so I'm probably not gonna try. I'm probably not going to try to get into the Western genre. So yeah, those 2 genres are definitely ones that I have very little interest in trying to get into. Question number 6 is a book that you've bought but will never read. For this, I'm going to go with Snow Like Ashes. I picked this up at a used bookstore, and I don't know why I did it. It's YA fantasy, which I don't tend to enjoy. I have heard that it has a love triangle, which I loathe that trope, and it sounds like Throne of Glass, and I honestly don't know why I thought that this book was one that I would enjoy, because I don't buy books that I don't think I'm going to enjoy, but this one, like, weird, like, I don't know what my thought process was for picking that up. But yeah, I bought it. I'm never going to read it. I actually recently kind of unhauled it. I went through my bookshelves and just removed all the books that I've read and didn't really care about, and books that I'm not interested in reading anymore, put them in a box. I'm giving them to my sister when she's older, so Snow Like Ashes is going to go to her as well. I'm never going to read it. I bought it, I'm never going to read it, and I don't feel bad about not reading it because honestly, I do not think that I would enjoy it at all. Question number 7 is a series that you have no interest in reading or a series that you started and DNF'd, and for this I'm going to go with the Devabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. So I read City of Brass, and it was a struggle to get through City of Brass, and you can watch my full thoughts on that in my book review that I made. I go into a lot of detail about all of the reasons why I didn't end up liking this book. Now, I do think that the end of the City of Brass did set up the rest of the series really well, but I'm just not interested in continuing. I really didn't like most of the characters, and I'm not interested in following them anymore. I'm not invested in their story at all. I don't really care to see how the plot ends up resolving. Like, I honestly could care less. And I don't want to read books that are this long when I know I'm probably not going to enjoy them. Like, these books aren't short books. They're like 600-700 page long books. And that's not a small time investment, and since I didn't like the first book, I'm probably not going to like the other books either, and that does make me sad because I did go into City of Brass expecting to love it. I'd heard a lot of good things about it going in, but I just did not like it at all, and I know I won't be continuing the series, so that's what I'm going to go with for this question. And question number 8, which is the last question, is a new release that you are not interested in reading. There are a lot of new releases that I'm not interested in reading. Actually, most new releases, I just have no interest. And maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places. Maybe I'm just seeing the wrong cover reveals, the wrong recommendation lists. But none of the books that I've seen that are coming out or have come out recently are books that appeal to me at all. Like, most of the books that are coming out now just they don't look interesting to me, and so I would say most new releases, but I'm going to talk about 2 specifically. So the first one is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. So this book is not technically, like, it's not new. It came out this year, but it came out earlier this year, but I would still consider it a new release, and it got a lot of hype. It was insanely popular for a while, probably still is insanely popular, but it was really, really hyped when it first came out. And I just have no interest in reading it. It's a romance-centric fantasy novel. Don't like that whole genre. I don't like the idea of it. Like, fantasy is a genre, romance is a genre. I don't like them being combined. It's just weird. And its enemies to lovers hate that trope so much, and it just does not look like my cup of tea at all. And so I will never be reading that book. I know I will never be reading that book ever. The other book that I can think of is one that I was actually interested in reading when I first heard about it, but just the more I think about it, the more I'm just starting to come to the realization that I am never going to get around to reading it, and that is Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. Now, I love the Lunar Chronicles. It's one of my favorite series. I think that it's super fun. I love the characters, but a lot of Marissa Meyer's newer books just haven't connected with me in the same way that the Lunar Chronicles did. I read Heartless, decently enjoyed that. It was good. Like, it was like a low 4-star read for me, like above a 3, but below a solid 4. And so it was fine. It's not one that I loved, but it's also not one that I hated. I read Renegades and I enjoyed it when I read it, but the more I think about it, the more I dislike it. Arch Enemies, I didn't like. I didn't like it at all, and I haven't actually finished the Renegades trilogy and honestly have no motivation to do that either. So when I heard about Instant Karma, at first I was kind of interested because, again, I love the Lunar Chronicles, but the more I think about it, the more I'm realizing that the Lunar Chronicles is really the only series by Marissa Meyer that I genuinely loved. And I just feel like Marissa Meyer's newer books just haven't been connecting with me in the same way that the Lunar Chronicles did. And from what I've heard of Instant Karma, it just does not seem like something that I would enjoy. It's a rom-com. I've heard that the main character is super annoying, and I don't want to read it, honestly, anymore. I did have it marked want to read on my Goodreads. I think I removed it. If I haven't, I'm going to remove it because I don't think I'm going to read it. I honestly don't. And another small side note, but I hate the cover. I really don't like the new cover trend for romance books. It's very weird, and all romance covers look like this now, and it's just kind of irritating to always see the same cover repeated over and over and over again, and so the cover doesn't appeal to me either. But that's obviously, like, side note, like, it's not the reason why I don't want to read the book. I have a lot of other reasons why I don't want to read the book, but I feel kind of bad because I did genuinely love the Lunar Chronicles, and I considered Marissa Meyer one of my favorite authors, but now I just feel like while I do still love the Lunar Chronicles, Marissa Meyer just isn't one of my favorite authors anymore, and that does make me really sad, but it's the truth, and I don't think that this book is going to be one for me, and so I'm just going to avoid it. I'm just going to stick with the Lunar Chronicles, and I'm going to love the Lunar Chronicles, and I'm just going to pretend that this book does not exist. So that was the Anti-TBR book tag. How would you answer some of these questions? Do you agree with any of my answers, or do you disagree with any of my answers? Please let me know in the comments down below. Just remember to be polite. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content. I post videos every Monday and Friday. I will see you guys again very soon. Bye.